delay. If you all have been waiting here, I am so sorry. We are having nothing but technical difficulties, but you know how we do it here. Little audible. We got Jeff here with me, and we got Philip. So let's get this show started.
Welcome to the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly.
It is going to be
morning, guys.
Days, guys. I think we are having. Philip, hey, morning, Lisa. There we go. Yeah, I think even the I'm going to issues, guys. If I'm coming in bad, I apologize. We're going to try to get this going, anyways. Philip, thanks for joining us this morning. I want to get into a little bit of your background and how you tie logistics and how maybe you can help our audience. So if you want to take it away, just give a little background on what you do now, your business that you have that helps you be on the customer side. So Philip, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So I have a finance background. I got into the industry years ago, and my first position in the industry was helping trucking companies with invoice factoring, actually. And if anyone's in trucking, they understand that factoring is really the lifeblood of a small trucking company because they can't get any other kind of financing. They're fresh out of the street. They don't have financials. They just started. And so banks aren't going to lend to them, but factoring companies sure will. So that's kind of how I got started. And that blended into and evolved into my current company called Brickster Capital. And what we do is pretty much everything on the capital side of a trucking business. So we provide fuel cards, we provide credit lines, we provide equipment loans, really anything that they need other than seed funding or finding investors. So I kind of built this after I started a trucking company several years ago. My buddy of mine, Bailey Perez, he started a trucking company, and I was always counseling him because he was a client of mine and a friend for factoring. And it basically evolved into him asking me questions every single day of how to run the company and how to structure things and how to do projections and how to pay drivers. And eventually I just asked him like, hey man, why don't you just give me some equity here and I'll help you run it. And so he did. And so I started running his company with him, and then we built it into a nice little operation. My brokerage was growing very quickly, and loan brokerage, I don't want to confuse anyone who's on the freight brokerage side. So to be clear, I mean loan brokerage. That was growing very quickly, and the customer side was just exploding. And so what I decided was it was running at a nice smooth point. So I said, hey, buy me out. Let's part ways here. We'll keep being friends. You'll still stay my client, but I don't think I'm needed. And so I exited that business and then focused completely on Brickster Capital. So that's kind of the scoop, I would say. Does that encapsulate it pretty well?
I love it. Yeah. I think so. Jeff, you got any questions for him?
No, not right now.
Okay. So now I do know you have the chemical company as well. So you are on the customer side. So what are you seeing as far as, it's kind of crazy right now. The market's all over the place. Rates. Anybody who is checking out the show tomorrow, I think we are going to have a great one with Dean for triple D Day.
Yeah.
So don't miss that.
Yeah.
It's going to be crazy what we go over. Dan gave me a little insight. I actually got the email just a little bit ago, so I was reading it. But yeah, it's going to be insane. So what are you seeing on your end? You having any issues?
Well, on the chemical side, what we do is we supply chemicals. So we'll buy them, we'll house them, and then we'll distribute them when we get a sale. So that comes with several problems currently. One of them, we're really at the mercy of the manufacturers because we're seeing that prices continue to climb and climb and climb. And so we have to pass those rates on to the customer so that we still make our margin. And so that means we have a lot of unhappy customers with price, unfortunately. However, the product is still solid and everybody is raising their prices. So it's not like we're unique in this. What I'm seeing across the board, specifically in chemical distribution, is that there are no stable prices. It can change on a dime. If the cost for raw just suddenly increases, and the cost of raw is dependent on oil and gas prices as well, oftentimes, because a lot of them are carbon based, it fluctuates madly. And then on the distribution side itself, we're seeing, because the gas prices, our tickets that we're giving our customers because we include freight, those are rising as well. So the overall cost to the end buyer is going up and up and up, which means on the consumer side that they're going to absorb those prices. Our customers absorb our prices. That gets passed down the line. And then the next up, obviously, is the end user and the customer, the normal person that's buying like a Krabby Patty from from Mr. Krabs, because we're things like
I love that you used the
prices go
Krabby
up.
Patty, Mr. Krabs.
Yeah, and when
Wow.
everything goes up, Mr. Krabs has to raise his prices. So that's just the unfortunate reality that we're living in right now.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's part of COGS, right? Cost of goods sold, trickle down effect that,
Mhm.
you get hit, you got to share that cost with your customers, and they don't
Right.
really want to hear that kind of stuff, but you have to let them know on that why prices went up.
Yeah, most
no,
people get it. We get some sore people, but most people, if they've been in business for more than 2 years, then
Hmm.
they completely understand because they weathered the same storm as we did.
Right. Philip, do
Exactly.
you see like your customers or clients, how they're pressurizing you to reduce your cost even though they know what's happening in the market?
Yeah, we see that sometimes. However, I really do think it's just become the norm. And because we sell a really niche product, meaning
Mm.
for us, everything is non hazardous, they can't beat us up on prices because we have a very unique product. I'd imagine on the commodity side, if someone is buying pure raw acid or caustic or something, then yeah, they'd want to beat the supplier up on prices. But we thankfully we don't get that a whole lot.
Right,
Okay.
right. Does your clients what does your clients look for in your for you as a service provider? Is it cheap cost or is it service? What is it?
Well, really, the first thing is the product, because what we sell is a derivative from traditional. So,
Hmm.
for example, I just met with a very, very large grocery chain in Texas, and what we're selling them is a diesel pump cleaner. What that is a non-hazardous derivative of what they currently have, and what they have now burns the hell out of you. So if you just get a drop on yourself, that's right there. That's a cost to the employer, because the employee is going to have to go to the doctor, and
Sure.
that's a lot more expensive than our chemicals. So the first thing they look for is, does it work? Because if it works, then great. Is it safe? Yes. If it's safe, then how's the distribution? If the distribution is solid and the price is solid and comparable, it may not be cheaper, but if it's at least comparable, then that's everything that they look for.
Hmm.
Nice. Now with the fluctuating pricing,
Mhm.
obviously, and the landscape, how are you guys? What approach are you guys and your team doing with your customers? Obviously, this is good advice for and more geared toward the same, I guess, processes that you guys are doing for our brokers or anybody who's listening. What advice would you give them of how to handle that with your customers so they aren't jumping ship or
Right.
freaking out? What are you guys doing to maintain that, I guess?
Well, I would say that's a sales question,
Yeah.
personally. And what that comes down to is maintaining a really solid relationship with your customers. So that conversation, it should be preceded by a relationship.
Yeah.
So the advice I give everybody is, before you have those price conversations, you need to make sure the foundation is absolutely solid. And that means checking up on them, calling them, personally getting to know them, not just talking business with them. And then when those price increases come down the pipe, you just schedule a call with them and say, "Hey, man, there's nothing I can do about this, but we're getting our price increases. That means our products are going to increase. Are you happy with the service so far? Is there anything we can change to improve the service?" And take the conversation away from the pricing, because they know what's going on. They know there's going to be price increases. But if you keep reminding them that your service and your products are excellent, and that everybody else's prices are increasing too, they're much less likely to shop.
I love that
Yeah.
I love that you said that. Yeah, that's one thing we try to focus on here a lot is, I mean, price obviously is going to fluctuate in your market and in our market and what's going on.
Right.
It's an up and down. I mean, it's just like the stock market, just like any other market.
Yeah.
It has its peaks and valleys. But yeah, it's just that relationship, building that relationship, giving that information, keeping. I'm so glad you touched on that. Jeff, you have anything?
Yeah. I mean, I looked at Philip's profile, and I saw some things that stuck out, and it said,
Okay.
don't pitch yourself over on LinkedIn. Give me a call. Let me know. Let's try to work things out. Let's build a relationship that way. What catches your attention, Philip? If a salesperson was going to reach out to you, what makes you tick and makes you interested in someone?
For sure. And that specific note,
question,
just
Jeff.
for people watching, that is for lenders because I'm in lending, and the way that we work is consulting and pairing people with lenders after
Right.
we really evaluate their packages and determine what's best for them. So what I'm saying on LinkedIn is lenders, because there's so many of them, don't reach out to me on LinkedIn because my LinkedIn is very customer centric. That's a test too, to be clear. That's a test because I do want new lenders because, I have dozens and dozens of them. They're all very well established. But if someone shows up and they show me that they're interested in me, I will reciprocate. And so what I'm looking for first is, one, do you read my bio? Because that's important. If you're going to do business with me, I want to make sure you do your research on me before you just blind pitch me. Because I'm a busy guy. I run 4 companies. I don't have time for the blind pitch of, hey, we're a X factoring company. This is what we do. It's like, okay, well, I've been in factoring myself for years. I already have 10 shops that we primarily work with and 10 on the back end. If those don't work out, why are you standing out by not listening to me when I first say, please don't pitch me on LinkedIn? So that's the first thing. Do they listen to me? And the second thing, I absolutely check all my references. And you can do that with any single industry. So if you're working with someone and you want to pick a new vendor, one, give them some rules. Make sure they follow your rules. If they follow your rules, that means they're going to be respectful to you and they're not going to try to bully you. And then if they follow your rules, then check your references too. So find some industry connections that you're friends with that that also know them, and determine, are they actually legit or are they just blowing smoke up everybody's pants, and should you not talk to them? So I would say those 2 things are pretty important.
So, it's very important for salespeople to do background checks on the person that they're reaching out to, the company or corporation that they work for, try to figure out what they're doing. How about you? Do you do the same thing? Do you look at salespeople's profiles, and what catches your eye if you do that?
Yeah, I absolutely do. If I'm looking at a vendor and a salesperson is pitching me, I do want to make sure that what I'm seeing isn't erratic, because there's some people just put way too much on social media. They just run their mouths and they say stuff they shouldn't. But what that tells me is that the relationship is also going to be erratic because they don't have any inhibition. So I'll look at that. And then the second thing I look at is content. Are they posting quality content? Do they know what they're talking about on LinkedIn? Because if it's just all sales pitches, like, hey, again, we're X factoring company, this is what we do, and if that's all I see, I'm not very interested. But if they're going into the details of what they do and giving customer testimonials and giving references, etc., I already know automatically that they're a much better vendor than the smoky counterpart that just is basically a hot air balloon, for lack of better terms.
Right. So the takeaway here, which I think is platinum, is that salespeople out there, when they're communicating, make sure that you have very good content, that you're consistent with that content, that you find a niche that you're very good at, before you start posting anything. You don't have to be, jack of all trades and be a professional in every single area, but try to pick out that value and that niche, because like Philip said, he's looking for that content. He's looking for that value. So when he does contact you, if he does, or if you contact him, there's some kind of relationship. There's a bond there that you are both on the same page, sort of speaking.
Exactly. And speaking of value, that is a great transition for our Dat Lane of the day.
There you go.
Let's go to that. Hold on, I gotta find his cool video. Here we go. All right, everybody. So it looks like today's Dat Lane of the Day brought to you by Christina and Dean over at Dat. Thank you guys so much for this. It looks like we got dry van from Newark, New Jersey to Columbus, Ohio. And it looks like line haul is 190, all in 264 with a contract rate of 309. So definitely below the contract right now. And it looks like it says, hold on, why is this cutting off? We are cutting off. Line haul to increase, hold on. Why is that cutting off? All right, the screen's cutting off on me, so I can't read the rest of it, but it says line haul to increase. Let me try to copy this and see if I can do it that way. So the rest of their information cut off on me, folks. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we've been having some internet problems, so.
Oh my gosh, yeah, the internet's going crazy on my end, by the way. If I am bouncing in and out, I am so sorry, everybody. But so line haul rates are increasing after dropping about 84 cents a mile since March. 19 cents higher than the average in June. So pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So that is our Dat Lane of the Day. Newark. So that was Newark, New Jersey to Columbus, Ohio. All right. So back to Philip, talking about posts, talking about things. 2 days ago, I seen a great post of yours. Says, advice for all the leaders in my network. And I really love this one. And I did love it. The only way you can hold other people to high standards, be taken seriously, is by holding yourself to high standards and taking them seriously. Is there some that drew that out, relationships, anything you want to get into with that? But I guess the reason it stuck out to me, I think we have, as leaders, anybody watching the show is a high achiever, anybody really just always looking to better themselves by watching our program, other programs. I mean, I religiously am watching YouTubes and that just for self-development, improving myself. Always, my competition is me. I'm just trying to be better than I was yesterday. But
for sure,
I think there's a lot of leaders who are doing that they feel like they get to a certain standard and then they could just, is that what you're going at? I guess dig deeper into that, but I'd love to hear kind of what sparked that comment and what's your feelings?
Yeah, for sure. And just for context, I help run 4 teams, and what that ends up being is that the accountability, in a sense, stops with me, and the buck stops with me. Mm-hmm. And so what I find is that if I am running a team and if for some reason I drop the ball, that means other people might feel like they can drop the ball too. And this is more like lazy dropping the ball. This is not making an innocent mistake. This is like taking the day off or doing something like that when I really shouldn't. And so what I found as a leader is I can't really, even morally, hold people to a high standard if I can't even hold myself to a high standard. If I'm continuously taking days off, if I'm always being lazy, if I'm not writing my contracts cleanly, if I'm not following up with my customers well, if I'm not talking to my vendors politely, if I'm letting my anger outside and just blowing up, I can expect my teams to follow that example. And so if I'm not holding myself to that standard and treating everyone equally and being a good leader and following up, etc., I can't expect my team to either. But if I am holding myself to a high standard because I'm the leader in the organization, that typically means that one, you'll be respected within your organization, and two, you can validly actually talk to people about stuff. Because that's the second part too. There's a communication issue. People won't listen to you if you're not holding yourself to a high standard. If you have to pull them aside and say, "Hey, man, that wasn't cool. You can't do that sort of thing. I need you to get back on the ship and do it this way." You can't have those conversations if you are doing the same thing that they are. And a
Right.
lot of leaders do that, unfortunately. I see a lot of business owners that are just going wild. And I can't imagine how messy it is within their businesses and within their staffs, especially in meetings, when
Mm.
internally within those teams, what I would see happening is all of the staff members are thinking, wow, didn't the owner just blow up on location the other day and run a guy out like a maniac? What if he does that to me? Can I do that to people? And it just
Mm,
leaves a bunch of questions running around in people's minds of what is standard and what is not,
Right.
because the owner does not hold themselves to any standard. And I
uh,
found that it's very, very important just to stay clean, to stay polite, to stay on a very straight path. And if you do, then you can hold your team to a high standard too.
yes.
Absolutely. And it goes back to the old adage, lead by example, right?
Hmm. Absolutely.
Bingo. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. No, I agree. You have to lead by example. If you're the self-awareness that you're talking about, I think that's the biggest key, though, to really honing that and leading by example is first being aware of, okay, what am I expecting from them, and am I doing it myself? And you have to inwardly always. And what are some triggers, I guess, that you use? What are some things that make that you keep you on that
On
path that
point.
you are expecting of them, so that I guess, what's triggering you to say, hey, I'm not doing this, I can't expect them to do that? Are there anything you're using that triggers you to say or check in? Any kind of special, I guess, things you're following to make sure you're always checking in as that leadership role, to make sure you're not kind of that do as I say, not as I do leader?
Right. Yeah, for sure. So one of those is always self-evaluation, and
Yes.
you always have to cycle at the end of the day and sit back and make sure you didn't do anything stupid, because we're people. We're leaders, but first and foremost, we're humans and we're people, and we make mistakes. It happens all the time. And so going back after a day, after a week, after a month, and thinking about all those things, just very simply sitting down and thinking about them is
Yeah.
very helpful. And then
Mm,
another aspect of it too is having controls in the business. But what I mean by that is having an open forum in a sense with your staff, because you don't
Yes.
want to be the leader that can't be approached.
Yep.
Because if I do something stupid and if I make a mistake, I want to hear about it. I want to
Yep.
hear about it from the janitor. It doesn't
mm,
have to be one of my executives or one of my team leaders. I want to hear it from anybody. If I talk
Bingo.
wrongly to a customer
Hmm.
and the secretary is sitting next to me, I want them to tell me. And so
mm,
having that constant accountability, it encourages two things. One, it encourages me to always be on the top of my game and making sure I'm doing well. And then two, it's a company wide persona. It's a personality of the business. If everyone is holding everyone accountable, and in fact, the leader of the organization, you can talk to him and say, "Hey, man, that wasn't cool. Can we talk about this?" That's a very powerful message. And people underestimate that, because a lot of leaders and organizations, they don't want to hear that. They don't want to be challenged. But I take
yeah.
the opposite approach and I think, well, look, if it's a legitimate comment and I really did do something stupid,
Call
I
me
need to
out.
hear about it. And
Yeah.
that fosters that community of accountability with every single employee. So I think those two things are super important.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love
Oh,
what
yeah.
now. Is
Jeff
there any
Patterson just
processes
popped
you
up. He said
follow?
transparency is key. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Uh,
So now, as far as getting your team to hold you accountable, is there anything, I guess, is there anything you're telling them? Are you doing like a weekly meeting? Are you weekly checking in with them? Or is it just, hey, if I'm having issues, or if you have an issue with me, open door, come tell me. I guess, is there a list of non-negotiables? So one thing I picked up from Alex Hormozy, he does not, anybody he either acquires a business from with acquisitions.com, anybody he hires in to work for acquisitions.com, instead of a mission statement, he has what he calls a list of non-negotiables. I just took basically his. I didn't like the one, so I kind of switched, but I really appreciate the other two. And that, I think it's kind of the same idea or mentality of like your ideal customer profile. So really finding that person, but not just a customer, but everybody. And so I took it to that next level of, hey, this is my non-negotiables for everybody that I ever even do work with. If I feel like this is not those three, we could be friends, we could talk, but we can't do business together. You have anything you check in or you give to your team to hold you accountable?
Yeah, and we make sure the culture is lined before we hire people, and that is important. So we don't necessarily have a list of things, but what we always do is communicate with them and discuss with them like what's important with the organization, and if those things are not important to them, like for example, just very basic clauses of being a moral person, treating the customer right, not cutting corners, just basic stuff like that. And even if they don't know a single thing about the industry and they carry those ideals, then we'll be happy to work together. Now, as far as ongoing accountability, we do have ongoing meetings that we just discuss operations and we bring up issues in those meetings.
Nice.
And a lot of times in those meetings, part of the meeting is actually talking to each other about what's going wrong. For example, if I have a meeting with my business partners and one of them did something that I thought was not correct, I mark it in the calendar or I mark it in the schedule of the meeting, and then we discuss it. And that's the same thing for anybody. So if I'm having a meeting with my staff member, they know that they can approach me about stuff because I want to make sure we're always on the same page.
Yep.
And they don't view me as just some guy on a pedestal waving a wand telling the orchestra what to do. I'm on the ground with them. I'm part of their team, and it's that camaraderie aspect of we're all troops together, we're all on a team, we're all on this march together, that allows the transparency, it allows the accountability. So that's typically what we do to foster that.
No, I love it.
Yeah, and it's very important, like for myself, I always had an open door policy, and the associates that reported to me, they were in the trenches day in and day out, and they knew a hell of a lot more than I did. And I always brought them into that inner circle so that we could discuss those problems. Like you said, Philip, that we had an end of the week meeting where we discussed what worked, what didn't work, where we can improve on, and have everybody involved in that. And, that comes down to the mutual respect, or treat others the way you want to be treated. And they'll be in your corner for a very, very long time. It's when you separate yourself from them and you feel that you're up here and they're down there, that's when the engagement of trust is thrown out the window, and you don't really get the productivity out of your team. So you were absolutely right about working hand in hand with your troops.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I agree. Oh man. Well, I think we are just about closing up on time, so I am going to close it out. But you nailed on a few things, and Jeff, thank you for the comment. Transparency. For any team to work, guys, if you're on a team, if you feel like communication, being open, sharing what's going on, not harvesting that, and also the transparency, just letting people know. One of the big things, sincere candor is my number 2 on my list, because I want people to call me out. I do love when people say I'm screwing up, because I want to know.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I think so. Yeah, Philip, I agree completely. Team. Listen, nothing is possible, everybody, without your team. You need a team. Everybody needs a team, whether it's at work, home, around us. We need people. We don't do this alone. Nothing on this planet happens alone. And if you think it does, you're already losing there. So, yeah, I agree. Team is the key. Communication, transparency, gold. Any final thoughts, Philip? Thank you again for joining us.
Well,
yeah,
I think
thanks.
the last thought, just finalizing the accountability and the approaching of people. As an owner, we have to be humble when we're approached. For
Yes.
example, there was a funny moment. Well, I say funny. I basically got backslapped by my business partner because I wasn't using the CRM properly. And I'll just go into this. Like I was being really lazy with the CRM because I'm more of an old school guy. And so I just keep the relationships. I make sure it's in my head, but that was not benefiting the team. And so my business partner had to have a really hard conversation with me where he literally stopped me in mid-sentence when I was saying, no, I think this is the right way to do it. He said, "Bad, Philip." Bad, Philip. I was like, did you just talk to me like that? And then I stopped like, wait a minute. Maybe I deserve to be talked to like this.
Yeah, right. Go to your corner, Philip.
Right. And that's exactly the frame that he brought
time
it
out
in.
now, Philip.
Yeah. But he
I
was
love
right.
that, though.
That's the thing. He was absolutely right. And if I didn't carry that attitude of humbleness, I probably could have died on that hill. I would have kept fighting him. I would have kept fighting my other business partners. I would have not been organized, and the organization would not have benefited from me. And so being humble when people actually approach you and say, "Hey, you're not doing this right," you got to think about it. You got to dwell on it and then take it in turn and then change. So I think the response is equally important as the actual culture itself.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Amen, Philip. And on that, we will end. Man, thank you so much. That was gold right there. So that was, guys, humble. You're a leader of your team. Put down the ego and think we go, and have your team be there with you. You have to have them call you out just like you want to call them out. So yes, absolutely. I agree. That's money. That is money, Philip. Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you for filling in for Dan.
No
Dan
problem.
will be with us tomorrow, guys. No worries. Trying to do my best to fill in for Batman while he's gone. But yes, tomorrow, Triple D Day. Dean, don't miss it. Going to be fun. I did get a little sneak peek, so it will be an interesting show. Thursday, we do have Steve Rizzo back. Conversations with Bob. Don't miss that. That's going to be really fun too. So great rest of the week. Thank you to American Logistics, Centurion Trucking for making this all possible. Thank you to Daman, People Over Profits. And again, thank you all for just joining us. We'll be replayed as always. And a quote to take us out. There's no name on this quote, but I just loved it. So one of the best lessons you can learn in life is to master how to remain calm.
Very good.
Everybody.
Very good.
Have a good one.
You too, guys. Thanks
for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Centurion Trucking, our motto is people before profit. Today's market requires more transparency, consistency, and focus on what our clients need to win. Centurion Trucking and American Logistics are poised to help their clients achieve and surpass their targets. If you're looking for a team that honors your needs, dreams, and aspirations, then get a hold of Daman at American Logistics or Centurion Trucking and start designing your career today.